Okay. So Ulrika, I think you wanted to ask a question or to share a request.
No, I'm sorry. I just made thumbs up for recording.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So if there's no request right now, it's okay, and I'll start the sharing and the presentation, and then I'll give some times also for questions. So I told Teresa I'll speak a little bit, I'll tell you a little bit about the roots of where I come from, but really I think that the time today is short for speaking about my roots. So I'll say a little bit, but there's also an interview that will be shared with you where there's a little bit more about how I came to work with trauma as well as mindfulness. So what is pertinent to this presentation and to our subject is that in 2005, 2007, I was working with Zulu women in South Africa. And it was a very funny story how I arrived there. It was something that came up in the meditation, and that I need to go there, but I didn't want to. I thought that, you know, it's not that I didn't want to, but I thought that I might have something else to do except for feeding people. So I was wondering, what could I do? And a woman from the Zulu people wrote to me on recommendation of another woman and asked that I come over there to videotape them, actually, to research their life stories. And that was surprising because I haven't been doing that for a long time already. But the woman that recommended, she was like, she knew me from way before. And so the funny thing was also that I received this letter, I think it was 2 days after I decided and bought a ticket to South Africa. And apparently this woman was already an hour away from the place that I thought that I'm going to. So things sort of like all hatched up, and so when I was there, we were thinking together what could be beneficial for them. And she took me around, and we heard the stories of the women there after the apartheid and after a lot of changes in Africa, because it was already after the white regime was changed. But still, there were a lot of stories and a lot of memories, and still there were a lot of people in the country that didn't know yet how to accommodate it, and the stories were very difficult. And the stories were very difficult, not only from the white people to the Black people, but actually also in between Black communities and within Black communities. And the Zulu people themselves were violent towards each other. So there was a lot of trauma, and the thought was that, you know, we need to bring the trauma techniques and trauma and resiliency tools. And then speaking about it a little bit more, we understood, because I went there with a few other people, and we understood that mindfulness needs to be there as well. We didn't know exactly why, but it was this intuition, and that, and also that some movement needs to be there. And once we brought and we did the course there, to the Zulu woman, it seemed like the right thing to do, because they actually came up to us after that and called us like the healers, like the old healers. And they told us that that was what the healers of the Zulu people used to do, and actually maybe also of the Xhosa people in South Africa, that they would go back to the body and they would listen to the sensations, and they would allow movements come up from that. And of course, they took it even to more, to stronger experiences of talking in tongues and stuff like that. But that little piece was something that was, you know, eye-opening and heart-opening to all of us. And then we continued, and that was the TOA group that went to South Africa. And then 2 of us continued to visit over there and bring more of the tools and listen and understand what is needed and how to adapt it to the culture as well. So then from there, coming back, there was a lot of interest actually in the Arabic community in the Galilee where I live. And things like the Druze and the Muslims and the Christians and the Jews, but it's not only the Jews there, and there's a lot of work to be done in between the cultures. And there was a request that we shall adapt that combination to the Arabic population. And what was really nice was that we brought nonviolent communication together with mindfulness and some less work with the body. And that is something that is also needed to understand, because the Zulu woman loved the work with the body, requested the work with the body, and they would start the meetings with song, and they would end the meetings with song. But the Arabic women that we worked with in the Galilee were a lot more reserved about the body. And there's something more classic in a way, more reserved, and very a different way of meeting, which even for the Europeans is still warm, but when you come from Africa, from South Africa, then you see that that is, you know, somewhat more lukewarm in the beginning, and after that, you know, you get engulfed. But so that already showed us, you know, that there are differences in the way that we need to bring things. And as you will see later on, I have a little bit of some slides, but it's really important to understand the culture. And you know, like when you bring a body scan and you bring a body scan to the Zulu woman, they're just like, they're accepting it with you know, with joy. And when you bring the body scan to some of the Arabic women, especially the Muslim women, then you have to you know, give a lot of info in the beginning, and maybe do it in small amounts and chunks, and be very careful and polite in the way that you bring it to the body. And on the other hand, and I'm already giving you a little bit about the cultural expectations, when they feel very stressed, they will come with a lot of bodily ailments, and then it's very okay to speak about the body. And the emotional content a lot of times is hidden. So this is, it's interesting, and I think that also part of it is also the way that they meet the foreigners. So when we were in Africa and South Africa, also in Tanzania, there was some projection on us because we were white people. although, you know, we thought that we're coming from a region where people could understand that we went through trauma, but for them, we are white and we are part of the oppressive group. And when we were working with the Arabic women in the Galilee, we were in a co-ed or a co-working team. So we had inside the team itself, just like now with Mindfulness in Arabic, we have a team that is cross-cultural and multi-faith. And so it was interesting to see how they, you know, reacted to a person that was speaking their language and how they reacted to a person that was speaking Hebrew and not Arabic. And for us, it was very interesting. We were collecting the information. On the other hand, for the Arabic women in Israel, that they were all educators and leaders in their communities. When we asked them, you know, we wanted to give them the meditations in Arabic, they told us, no, 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 give us the meditations in Hebrew. Why do you need to give it in Arabic? So again, that's something to stop and question, you know, and part of that is also part of a power game there, okay? We offered, so we said, okay, you know, we'll offer them meditation in Hebrew and then we'll offer it in Arabic, and tell us, what do you feel? And then we had a conversation around it that, you know, the intellect, the cognitive part wants it in Hebrew because it's a mastery for them. But the heart, you know, the body likes it in their own language, the language of their mother, like we say, the mother tongue, you know. So in order to be intimate, a lot of times we need to have it in our mother tongue. Not always, again, because sometimes that was traumatic, but for these women, it was the right thing. So, and then again, I moved to Turkey and worked with Syrian refugees and Syrian therapists and Turkish therapists that worked with the refugees, as well as in hospitals in the north of Israel. The Red Cross invited me to teach there. And again, it was like another culture. And I'm saying this because I think that we really do need to be, to stay curious and to open, you know, our ears, because we are all human beings, and we all have that brain that has, you know, the cognitive and emotional and the sensation and the autonomic nervous system, and yet interpretations are there as well, and norms and history and power games, and we need to be sensitive to that, especially when people come as refugees and they don't feel secure, and that's part of their being refugees, but it's also part of their meeting with a community that might feel a little bit of animosity because of the difference of the culture, because of the amounts of people that are coming. So, you know, so all of that is there when we work with the people from different cultures, as well as when we work with refugees. Nowadays, I will open in a little bit the PPT, the PowerPoint, but I'd like you to know that mindfulness in Arabic came to be out of the TOA group and out of something that we call the Galilee Healing Sisterhood. And we are trying in mindfulness in Arabic to bring trauma sensitive mindfulness. and to adapt it to the culture and to a specific culture, to the culture of the Middle East Arabs. The African Arabs speak a different language, actually, a different dialect, and also their cultures. It has different colors, you know, the Emirates have a little bit of a different culture as well. So Egyptians have a very different dialect. So this is something that we need to have our ears open to as well. I know now that also with the Ukrainians, some of the material was translated into Russian, and you know, Ukrainians usually do speak Russian as well as Ukrainian. But in this situation, you know, I think they would be very respectful to translate things into Ukrainian. I don't know, you know, if it is there or not, but that would be something that I would, you know, give attention to when I work with refugees. So can I share the slides?
Does it work? I enabled sharing.
Okay, let me just see if okay. Okay. Yeah, can you see it? And now I have to see how you So this is what we're working with. We're working with an online platform that is in Arabic and English, and we're actually changing the website so that there will be one website in Arabic and one website in English after a request of people. This is a little bit from Turkey and from the Galilee, and these are our volunteers. So volunteers that are doing great work. And these are some of the women that we are working with. Some of the women we worked with in the field itself in Turkey and Greece, and some we haven't. We worked via the Zoom, and this is one of the maps of where people come from when they join our course. And that's from 2020, since something like 2000 this year, and all in all, something like 8,000. Let me, I can see that I went, let's see if I can do back. No. Okay. So there's something like 8,800 now already. And they come from many, many places around the Northern Hemisphere mainly, and it's from the Emirates and Saudi and Iraq and Lebanon and Palestine and UK, Germany, Italy, Sweden, Canada, even, you know, the United States. So it's spreading, and most of them are refugees and people that have either gone out of Syria or gone out of Iraq. We can't actually, people can't get come into our website when they're in Syria, because we have some people from Israel on our group, and the Syrians have blocked our website. And this is how the course looks like. So there's some PDFs, and there's some audio, but it's mainly created so that people in transit can work with it. So we're not using a very wide internet provider, or so people audio is enough. But what I would like to talk about is the challenges in adopting mindfulness for Arab refugees. And when we're talking about that, actually, we're talking about challenging and adopting the adaptation of mindfulness to refugees in large. So we know that the effectiveness of mindfulness courses, is well researched and documented. But without proper attention to symptoms of trauma, mindfulness techniques may exacerbate trauma-related problems. And that's something, that we know from the field since Africa, and but we also know it even from before, specifically because I've been a mindfulness practitioner and mindfulness teacher in 1990, and then 1994 already a facilitator. But also because I've studied somatic experiencing and became a trauma and resiliency psychotherapist specifically. And I saw that, that there are places where if we stay a little bit too much in mindfulness, it can bring on some overwhelming issues. And so even in MIA, the question is, how do you adapt? And so as I spoke already about language and culture, but also adapting mindfulness to crisis areas and unstable communities. People that are moving from one place to the other, people that haven't found yet their new home, and mindfulness a lot of times is about settling. And, and a lot of times people do the body scan, for instance, for relaxation, but a lot when people have a traumatic experience, or when people are still not feeling stable or secure, that cannot be your goal. So that also we need to adapt ourselves also as facilitators, not only the technique itself, yeah, but what our goals are, what are what are we offering, and adapting mindfulness to population holding traumatic imprints, and speaking of physical ailments. And then faith, when faith and also political affiliations, because the Muslims were asking, is this something that's going to take them away from their faith? And then in time, they actually saw that this is actually something that's very close to things inside their own faith, that sitting and closing their eyes and praying. We do it with the hands like this, but they do it with the hands like that. They offer themselves to a divine, to Muhammad as a messenger of the divine. But we're actually asking a lot of times to come back to yourself, and sometimes that's brings up a question. So where and how do you negotiate this, and how do you bring this across? And so we had some conversations with people, and we understood that actually, when I'm better situated within myself, when I have a better center, then I can receive also, the whatever I would like to receive from the divine. So it doesn't stand vis-a-vis or in some kind of a conflict. And we are very secular with whatever we bring, just like mindfulness is, but we're even more sensitive to that, because sometimes our teachers do bring, stories from their Buddhist past, but here we're very, very secular. And you see the olive, the drawing of the olive, because we changed also a few of the meditations to be connected more to the metaphors and to the culture itself. So instead of a raisin meditation, we have an olive meditation. And we also sometimes, when we speak about being overwhelmed, or you know, when in the West we might bring metaphors of water. When you speak with Arabic community, then the metaphors are of a very electrical storm. And in Africa, the metaphors are of a lot of animals and sand. And so it's you know, and also again, when you bring those metaphors, it shows respect, and the people are more likely to try things out. There's something that I wanted to say here. I know there was a place in the UK in the beginning of the time when refugees came from Syria, and they gave them recordings that were made by an Egyptian woman, very good meditations. But the Syrians and Egyptians have a long history, and they were rivals sometime as well. And the people from this area, they would not like so much to hear meditations in Egyptian dialect. So they didn't continue listening, only when they were in the session, but at home they didn't. And we chose to check also our recordings, and we saw that people come in rather often to listen again. And that also gave us a little bit of a you know, reassurance that this is the right thing to do, to give it in the same dialect, or as close as possible. And then, as I said, the body communication versus the emotional. When we choose the language of sensation, it's interesting, how do people say things in their own language. And like when we were translating compassion in Arabic, there are at least 4 different compassions, words for compassion. There's one that is connected only to the connection between a mother and her child. And there's one that is more connected to like a larger perspective. And there's one that's more empathy, but they weren't sure yet if it's empathy or compassion, etc. So again, it brings really beautiful conversations that, you know, make the material a lot more intimate and a lot more accessible. And of course, as I spoke already about body covering and privacy. So not all refugees are traumatic. This is important to understand. At large in the population of the world, according to the UN, and research done, something between 33 or 35% of people have some trauma. But within the refugees, at least the Ukrainian, there's still not researched, but with the Iraqi and Syrian refugees and the African refugees, it has been noticed that something between 45% to 50%, which is a large percentage. It will calm down with resettling, and then it needs to be researched again. But just to understand, because when we hold trauma in the body for too long, then it can create a lot of chronic symptoms, as you know, as mindfulness teachers. So we have learned that trauma is not just an event that took place in the past. It is also and mainly an imprint left by the meeting of a nervous system and a real life experience. That's really what Peter Levine, the teacher of the somatic experiencing, has brought, to remember that as well as another guy called Scare. If you want to go and read, The Body Bears the Burden is the book. And he speaks a lot about that, the meeting of a nervous system and a real life experience. And if we speak in mindfulness terms, it's sort of like an imprint left on all four foundations, you know, sensations, emotions, thoughts, and processes, you know, of consciousness. But what we really want to understand is that it's a split, you know, and you can hear it a lot of times from the way that people talk to you. They actually might say, you know, I felt something break, you know. I suddenly did not feel myself, you know, or I saw myself from afar, you know. So that's a little bit of a split, what we call dissociation. And I don't know, do you know about the brain and the hand? Have you so when we learn about this, you know, that too much stress, too fast, too little time, and then a lot of the areas of the brain, they might have a little bit of a dissociation. What is important to our cause in mindfulness is the 9 functions of the prefrontal cortex. So this is something that Dan Siegel speaks about. So just a little bit about dissociation is the essence of trauma. Overwhelming experience is split off and fragmented so that the emotions, sounds, images, thoughts, and physical sensations related to trauma take on a life of their own. The sensory fragments of memory intrude into the present where they are literally relived. As long as the trauma is not resolved, the stress hormones the body secretes to protect itself keep circulating, and the defensive movements and emotional responses keep getting replayed. That's Bessel van der Kolk. I'll jump that, and think I'll come back to, let me just see if how can I come back to that? Oh, not what I wanted. So, yeah. So, you know, you might want to tell me if you have learned about the window of tolerance. Yeah, you've learned about the window of tolerance. Okay, so what we want to do actually with mindfulness, and for now already, I guess you can understand where mindfulness comes in, because as we know that the trauma, you know, brings us back into the dorsal vagus, brings us back into the autonomic nervous system, and that is here. And what I was doing in the beginning was this kind of elongating and trying to, you know, free up a little bit of this area, which a lot of times becomes very tense in traumatic experiences, and when people are still in this chronic situation. And we would like to work with the language of sensations first. And that's what's so, you know, so wise actually in the mindfulness material itself, you know, from way back, from so many thousands of years, that people understood that the way to enter would be through that area, which speaks the language of sensations. The limbic system speaks the language of emotions. You know, the prefrontal cortex speaks the language of symbols and words and analysis and synthesis. But the autonomic nervous system, this area in the back, where we're, you know, the pragmatic and the autonomic and the defense mechanisms, they speak the language of sensation. So it's amazing to start, you know, with just that, with teaching that ability to listen to more and more sensations. And yet, when people, you know, come with a loss, a very strong loss, or with this feeling of being scared and fear and violence and running away from, they will not want immediately to come back to the body. They will want you to solve things, you know, all of the, you know, people that understand also the energy system. When fear comes in, it closes our first energy centers, and then all of the information, you know, and all the energy comes up, and our mind is going and it's trying to rework something, you know, as well as the autonomic nervous system. So, and this you know, sympathetic parasympathetic conflict, you know, what's happening here, you know, and which is what the window of tolerance is speaking about, you know, being either hyper or hypo because of that conflict. So we want to come back to the body because the body is the best place to come back to, actually, to create some safety, you know. I think, who was it that said, John O'Donoghue, I think, said that, you know, the body knows when it's safe, you know, that there is safety, but our mind a lot of times sort of like stops us from coming back, just like it stops us from, you know, going like this after some kind of accident or so we want to, but we will need to tease the system. Okay, we will need to invite it, but with respect, just like we did before with culture. So going slow, but not too slow. If you go too slow, then you might bring people into some kind of fear. Okay, so you go slow, but not too slow. I always remember this. I don't know if all of you know the story about Goldilocks and the three bears, and she goes and she, you know, she chooses the porridge that is not too hot and not too cold, and the chair that is not too big and not too small, and so you walk very slowly and with sensitivity to that, and then you do grounding and resourcing, and don't know if you heard, but I was all the time, you know, inviting curious attention. Curiosity is a great balm for bringing back life, and we want to see how can we bring that, because when we're in a traumatic experience inside of us, a lot of times we go to very to two polarities, either rigidity or chaos. Okay, but these are polarities, and we already have some assumptions about them, some convictions about them. We want to bring back flexibility. We need that curiosity again. We do give education on interoception, the language of sensations and awareness. As I said here, returning to the window of tolerance and flexible anchors. So why am I saying flexible anchors? Because when we come back to the breath, and being a mindfulness teacher, you know, the breath is hailed, you know, as the so much as the secret ingredient, right? I mean, you know, let's just come back to the breath. But when somebody is holding that trauma imprint inside of them, a lot of times it's imprinted in the breath. So the breath might be something that's overwhelming, or something that they don't want to go to, you know, simple, no overwhelming, just they don't want to, not interesting. So the idea would be to bring attention to a different anchor, and from there to come slowly to the breath, and just to notice when, like points of contact, I'm bringing the attention to the feet, or I'm bringing attention to the point of contact with the seat, and then I'm asking if there was a breath coming in or a sigh, and that's it. I'm not really putting attention on the breath. So slowly I'm teasing the apparatus, you know, to become a little bit more flexible. So we can start with sounds. We can start with the hand, looking at the hand, moving the hand. I might do with you a little bit of that. We can start with the feet and the touch of the feet on the ground. And we, of course, if these do not work, we can bring some other safety or warm and loving memory if the person is willing to do that. It's really something that sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. So, and as I'm saying here, working the path between chaos and rigidity. Do you know what I'm speaking about when I'm speaking about chaos and rigidity? Some do, and do others too? No, okay. So Dan Siegel is speaking about chaos and rigidity, and he's speaking about it as a scale, like that there are these two polarities. And as I said, when this system is shaken, it goes to polarities. So chaos and rigidity both are actually, not the healthy place to be. Rigidity, he speaks about, he brings an orchestra or a choir as an example. So rigidity would be our ability to sing only one note, and that all of the people in the choir sing the same note. And chaos would be that each person is singing their own note and there's no harmony there at all, okay? And what we want slowly to bring, and it's not only the choir, but it's actually, the different systems of our body. We would like to bring back into that window of tolerance where there's a little bit more harmony, right? Where the life wave has its movement in such a frequency that is, good for the system, that can be tolerated by the system. That's why it's called the window of tolerance. So we work the path between that and that. I just want to see, okay. So interoception is another thing that's important to understand, and I'm sending you, and I'm giving you just a little bit of, points to go and to look into and to learn a little bit more about, because interoception has been shown to be vital to resilience. Now, interoception, in a way, is exactly what we do in mindfulness. We are actually practicing interoception, especially in the first foundation of mindfulness, language of sensation. Coming back to the senses, okay? Through that, we can overcome the basic split. So resilience through resettling, lowering vigilance, and if there is more resilience and there is more listening to the body cues, there is better empathetic communication. So just that, and I'll show you, I think I have another slide about that research about safe nervous system processes and body cues may facilitate constructive interactions with the relational world to support change and growth. And that is, Hasse is the one that's doing the research. Just to understand that interoception is connected with the insula in the brain. And the insula also, and the interoception system allow for the homeostasis of the immune system. So when we say a lot of times that the traumatic experience is also based on what immune system came into the experience. If our immune system is confused or weak for various reasons, we might be more susceptible to a traumatic process and a traumatic imprint. So we're trying to understand how does mindfulness and how can mindfulness be helpful? So just with humility, but it can be, and mainly with the first foundation. That's where it would be very safe to begin, with language of sensations, with teasing the way back into the breath. And that in itself can help also for the people to return into resilience and their systems to return into some place where they can deal maybe better with emotions, or at least the way that they dealt before. Okay, we're not yet bringing them into a higher mind state. So this is Thich Nhat Hanh. It's a poem that I love. I hold my face between my hands. No, I am not crying. I hold my face between my hands to keep my loneliness warm. 2 hands protecting, 2 hands nourishing, 2 hands to prevent my soul. I can't see the end of it, from leaving me in anger. So the anger in the refugee status is very strong. Sometimes it's even rage. And the loneliness, the sense of being cut off, not only split off from myself, but also split off from my family, split off from my community, from my culture, from my house. Maybe some people have seen their house burn down or collapse, or some people have seen their loved ones break down or murdered or died. So sometimes we need some holding. That sense of being alone and being separated brings us back also to things that Thich Nhat Hanh and also Tara Brach speak about, you know, the trance of separateness. And that's something that mindfulness and our practices, so some self-touch as well could be very helpful. There's sometimes some practices that just hold. So there's you might want to do it right now, sometimes when there's a little bit of too much activation, overwhelm. You can do something that's called the butterfly, which is, can you see me? It's putting the hand on the arm and moving it, and then moving it a little bit, like moving it in different velocities, and then slowing it down and noticing what happens in the body. And another thing might be to hold one arm underneath the armpit of the left, and then the other hand on the right arm, and just to notice, you know, if anything changes. So using the language of sensation and mindfulness and curious, gentle attention, and just that, you know, that inner quality of kindness, that inner quality of, you know, a loving witness, because it can be very helpful, very beneficial for the traumatic experience of being so separate, of being alone. And another thing that could be helpful, and that's something that the mindful self-compassion people work with, is putting a hand on the heart And then maybe just saying, I hear you, I can sense what is happening here. Again, to bring that kind witness that we sometimes do not have from the outside. So I'm going to stop here. And see, there's a lot more, but I'd like to see if there are any questions until now. And how do you feel about this information? And how is your body right now? And yeah. So Elena says that she needed to leave now. And she's from the Ukraine. But we have Jazz here. And I don't know, Jazz, if you want to say a few words or about the situation, and maybe some words about what I brought, and does it relate to what you're working with or not? And
yeah, thank you, Juditta. Hello, everyone. Glad to be here. Actually, grateful to be here. Teresa reminded me, and before that, I knew that it's going to happen, this meeting. And then we had some email chatting with Juditta. So all these things just brought me here today, and I'm grateful to listen and just accept everything what you're sharing. A lot of things are resonating. A lot of very practical and simple things can be very helpful nowadays, especially working with the refugees. So I have groups that I'm working with. Mostly they are refugees and displaced people within the Ukraine. And of course, I know Elena, who just left and wrote you. So we are from the same Academy Solterano in Spain, and we work together. So I know her very close. So last 3 weeks after when I settled down here in Spain, I'm also a refugee. We decided to leave Ukraine. I'm originally from Kazakhstan, which is in Central Asia. So I am not Ukrainian, like by the blood, but I lived there 15 years. My wife, she's Ukrainian. My daughter, she's Ukrainian. So I know the culture. I know, of course, not by the blood itself, but I know the language. I know the traditions and rituals and everything. And I know the conflict with Russia, of course. And of course, a lot of helpful, useful things to consider I am hearing now, especially about the language. Because Ukrainians, they speak Russian as well. And nowadays, it's very traumatizing to hear Russian language for Ukrainians themselves. Yeah. And this is a very tricky moment because some people do not speak Ukrainian, even though they are Ukrainians, especially for those who are from the eastern part of Ukraine, people who lived close to the Russia. But it's very hard to process that for all of them, because when they started to move from the eastern part to the western, because it's more or less safe. But in the western part of Ukraine, they speak Ukrainian language. And there are some, of course, situations that they feel guilt because they speak Russian, but they very against Russia nowadays. They have this trauma. So it's a very tricky moment. And that's why my intention is to gather a lot of information, process that, and from different sources, from different expertise and so on, to bring it and do this adaptation in mindfulness providing, not only for me, but for our trainers Ukrainian Russian-speaking trainers. We have community, it's a small one though, but we I really want to bring this knowledge and this trauma sensitivity in teaching mindfulness, and also working with trauma and recovery, trauma recovery, and very grateful to be here. So a lot of things that I want to share, but maybe I'll stop here.
Okay.
Thank you.
So one of the things is language, and the other thing might be also that just as I was saying about the culture of the body, so just to be a little bit aware of the culture of the body, and who can ask if, you know, maybe a man can, but a woman can't, maybe a woman can, but a man can't. So it's interesting always to be open to that. And I'm wondering if you know, you have met, you know, anyone in this group have met already refugees? Have you worked already with refugees?
Well, I have met refugees. I was for 3 weeks in Sofia in a center that was helping refugees get first help actually after they came into the country, Bulgaria, and they were, well, the center was maintained by volunteers only, with a very small staff of 5 people who were there every day. Yeah, I went there invited by someone who said they all need psychological, emotional support, because both groups of refugees and of course and volunteers are super busy, and they don't have even time to go and drink water, for instance. And I saw many things that in my opinion needed help and support. When I spoke with the different people, asking them how they are and what they need, and mainly they were actually volunteers, because I don't speak Ukrainian, and my Russian is okay, but I didn't want to interfere directly. And they said that they just don't have time right now. The time was just scarce, and they didn't have time to do anything else but take what they needed, like literally food and clothes and shoes and nappies for their children, and rush into the place that they were they just found. And for this reason, we discussed with the organizers of how this emotional support can be organized in a more efficient way, because right now there is something that looks like chaos. What we found out with other psychologists is really the idea to maybe train volunteers who are on the first step, in the first stage of meeting refugees, of doing mental health first aid, including practices and mindfulness. And so we're creating a platform as well, online, with some contacts of people who, volunteers like me, who are ready to give this mental health first aid, like maybe meeting people. What some colleagues, psychologists, told me, who have worked also with Syrian refugees before, is that the first week of the war, they got very many calls from Ukraine, even from shelters, people who were really distressed and scared, and they found through their phones their contacts, and they were calling.
Right.
And now a month and more from that, what happened is that these calls stopped,
Mm-hmm.
and we all kind of observe that right now people are very mobilized. They're on a stage where they're, you know, kind of ready to fight, and they're not in this moment of awareness that they want to speak with someone, or the emotional load is not at the moment a priority, or even they're not aware of that.
I'd like to say a few words about that, Stetsy. It is important, and it's really important to understand also that when severe stress comes up, or when there is an intimidation to our life, or to the life of, you know, the ones that are dear to us, it's not about speaking about emotions, or, you know, it's like, and just to understand that is very important. A lot of times people put up emotional first aid, but I think that what is more important is just to recenter, to allow people to discharge physically, and feel their capability to withhold this, to move through this. And when they will arrive to a place where they can settle, then the emotional qualities and the emotional stories and the emotional discussions will be right. But a lot of times, being therapists, you know, we want to go into the emotions, but that's not the right thing to do in that time. So I'm glad to hear that you've seen it. And yet it is important to support, and that's why, you know, mindfulness, trauma sensitive mindfulness, I think is the right thing for this situation. Because and again, what I wanted to say was I think that I did not say is that, or maybe I did say about small chunks, but even when we give the mindfulness practice, to give it in very small chunks, okay, to build that flexibility, to build the ability of the mind body organism gradually, if at all, because sometimes they move through us. And then it's better that we don't give them anything that, you know, might be too much for them in a place where we're not there and we can't, you know, attend to it. So it's better to give whatever practice that they can do on transit, you know, that can bring them back, that can ground them, that can allow them to gather themselves, even for 5 or 7 minutes. And those are like small candles, we call them, you know, it's like, they might be helpful in showing the way, you know, and then later on, you know, they can find places also to expand on that. So that's, you know, really important. And I know that even these are small things, like just to sense, just to allow oneself to pause, you know. Tara Brack, my teacher, she has a very, very old meditation about pausing. I think it's something like 8 or 10 minutes. It's somewhere on the internet. I might find it for you. It's just the right thing, you know, not much more than that. And on the other hand, she has very long meditations, which I would not recommend to anybody right now, which is a refugee or working with refugees. The other thing, Stacey, that I'm hearing is the issue of vicarious trauma, which humanitarians a lot of times experience, and that a lot of times is gone without saying. That is secondhand trauma. Is like we come with an open heart, with a lot of, you know, this want to give to the other, you know, and the others come with the feeling of a lack of, because they've left everything, and they've you know, they feel they don't have anything, just like what you said, you know, they have maybe a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and then they come with a lot of demand, and as well as with this kind of anxious energy. And the person that is sitting with them, you know, in their body, they can receive that. And it's a conflict there because it's also, there's something, that feeling that I'm not giving enough because there's a lack of, and there's also that, you know, the story that is not really told that is coming in also. So because it's like the bodies are speaking. So I think that work with the people that are helping is really important as well. And that's what we did also in Turkey, and also with the people in the hospitals. We worked also with the people that were giving care to the refugees or to the severe wounded soldiers. So this is important as well, to remember that as a humanitarian, or as a person that is on the, you know, the caretaker right now, to stop and do some scanning and do some pausing and nourishing, you know. There's a beautiful meditation by Tara, which is called Rain, and Michelle McDonald before her. And if anybody, you know, if you'd like to be interested or curious about that, I really recommend it in times like that, because it helps when we're working with this kind of population. Of course, it helps at other places as well, but, you know, when we work with refugees and people that carry a lot of trauma imprints. So, I saw that Celine, I think, yeah. So she, yeah, said that it brought her to think about her own family, especially her Black and brown siblings in Ukraine. So all of the colors of the rainbow, it doesn't really matter, but yeah, there are things that some of us receive intergenerational, and some of our history, some of our people's history, some of our skin color history can come up as well when we're shaken. So this is important also. Jazz, are you raising your hand?
Yes, I just want to add something. Maybe it can be useful. I heard the story, Stacy's story. So as I'm working also with Amit Bernstein, and we discussed that together, Juditta. He's the one who also do the initiative. He's launching very soon these days, and they prepared this pre-recorded 9 sessions for the whole people who are suffering, refugees, especially, and displaced people. And they have a website called Moments for Refugees, and there's a specific Ukrainian initiative. So they record it in Ukraine and in Russian and in English languages, like pre-recorded 9 or 8 sessions. So this is also, I did listen all of them, and it is the same what we're talking about, the simple practices, not long, and considering this trauma sensitivity is there. So we also have the collaboration, and also will deliver and disseminate all this information in Ukraine and around the world for refugees, actually.
Good. Excellent. Yeah.
If
Thanks.
I may add something, what we were focusing on in this very short time was actually the children, because people, I mean, it's very specific. The center was like people were waiting on a line in a queue, and they were registering, and then they were going. So it was just a constant flow. Sometimes the queues were really big, and they had to wait. While waiting, there was a room specifically for taking care of childcare, made specifically to take care of the children and to play with them. And so one of my colleagues is somatic, experiencing kind of trauma for children. So we worked a little bit with the children there, because they're easy to try to access. They were in groups and playing. and that was really very helpful,
Right.
I think, for them,
Yeah.
because they did movement, we did movement with them, and
Yeah. Movement is excellent, and also for the grown-ups, if you manage to get them to move a little bit, you know, without that shame or something, because as we know, moving from dorsal, you know, we want to go up from dorsal to ventral, but we have to move through the sympathetic. That's part of what Porges and Devdana are showing us, and to move the body is helpful to bring into the sympathetic. But again, being very careful, because, you know, movement can also bring out the rage or the anger, or, as I said, the shame, or, you know, so with the grown-ups, with the kids, it's easier because they're you know, prefrontal cortex is not so hard on them. But with the grown-ups, you know, you want to be a little bit more gentle with that. And I will say that we're also coming to a close, I think, but I will say that Mindfulness in Arabic has their practices in Arabic as well as in English. So it's on the site, and Katharina and Teresa will send you some information. There's also a 3-hour teaching that I gave to mindfulness teachers in the UK that is on our website, and I think it's $20 or something like that, and that's a donation to the Mindfulness in Arabic project, and then you can have that 3 hours of video teaching. Some of it is what we spoke here, but some of it is also a little bit more expanded, as it is 3 hours. So and there's some exercises and practices, and also, you know, if any one of you want, you can write to me or to Shaden, which is the project manager, and if you have some questions or you'd like to receive more teaching, so that can be done as well, be provided. Supervising work with refugees or just with trauma. Doesn't need to be a refugee. So you can see that on our website, or some of the links that I will send via Katharina or Teresa. Any question for the end, for the conclusion? Anything that you feel that still is needed?
I don't know if I just somehow, I appreciate a lot what I've heard, and it really resonated a lot because I've been working in the Zatari, a refugee camp, and we did it also in Arabic. So, but I came originally from theater, interactive theater and conflict transformation. So it came from the body work, but then it was felt that it was needed. And I just, one thing which I do love to share what you said already, this right timing for when is it the time to feel your body, because sometimes what do I do if the trauma is ongoing, the violence is ongoing? You know, people come to me, how can I get less empathic? They ask you, and mindfulness is proven to make you more empathic. And if they say you want to become less empathic, there is something where I just, this dilemma in working in situation where the injustice is ongoing, and I have to think about David Becker, the invention of trauma, and where he brought up that also sometimes we need to state that it is unjust, and just to express it and just to state. And particularly then what you also mentioned, what I feel always tricky about, you know, the guilt I have, or which comes to me, or the anger I get then later on, and how do I justify my beautiful life in that situation? There is something I also struggle with, or I you know, to bear this injustice in me, like, you know, and I feel I like very much how you brought all this up, the complexity of the issues. I'm very grateful for the path you pave to bring all these things in, as it's not so easy that we can just give via online meditations and life will be easy like that. I mean, nobody does it here, but it's about building connections and bearing the pain in my body from the other who looks into me, and reconciling it within me somehow. And yeah, thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Anna.
Can I add another thing, last thing, very shortly? What was saying Stacy, I also witnessing this tendency that people, their attention goes outwards. So let's go back, and we need to fight. We need to give the power to others who are fighting, like first line help givers. So, and all the energy they just sending outwards. They are not, they forget about themselves. They forget about to take care of their state of just being. And this is what also another side of it. Of course, it's a good thing to help others, but again, they just don't know how to help themselves. And this is also becoming problem. People, they don't have a request.
I want to stop for just a second, because I think that it's difficult to tell them what to do. For some people, sending energy to other people gives them a sense of strength. And for some people, coming back to themselves brings them more blame. So,
stress, yeah.
So not only stress, but actually, blame. That what are they thinking only about themselves? So,
Yeah.
so it is a place where I would listen, and I would again use that in order to come back to the body. That's all. I wouldn't tell them what to do, but I would say, when this is happening, how is it in the body? Okay, that's all we need to do as mindfulness teachers.
Exactly, this is invitation.
Just that, and what's next, and I think that it's difficult. It's also, just like what Hannah was saying, it's like the politics here and the justice and the moral issues are so strong. And I'm not really sure that we know exactly what is right. So what we can give is the knowledge of resilience, is the knowledge how to stay flexible. And this is what, at least what I would like to, invite us all to be able to give in this situation. In other, when I do trauma therapy or in place with people that are more settled, it's a different process. Then we can also discuss, other issues and at length. But here, it's rather focused, And another thing that comes up from what you were saying, Jazz, is that we actually give a lot of times the loving kindness meditation. And there's we recorded the loving kindness meditation, and has been very beneficial for people. And that in a way creates that balance between giving to myself and giving to others, giving to myself and giving to others. And in the Arabic world, in the Arabic population, it was accepted very warmly, because they always see themselves as a larger group. And to think only of themselves is something that is, not very common. And usually it's by rebels, but not by most of the community. So they see themselves as part of circles. So this loving kindness meditation, which is actually, if we do it correctly, has in it the mindfulness part as well, and has in it some of the heart qualities, that then they can, that heart quality a lot of times is some kind of oil, we call it the olive oil of the heart, and it can also bring a little bit more flexibility. So that's a good idea as well. I don't know if it's in the recordings in Ukraine, but I think that that should also be there. Yeah. So
Magdalena has raised her hand. Magdalena?
Yeah, I just have a short question about loving kindness meditation in this context. As it goes in all four forms, how do you do it?
I don't.
You don't. This is
I
what I
don't.
wanted to ask.
I begin with a benefactor, actually. And if there is a possibility for a benefactor, that's where we begin, or, you know, some goodness that can come, and then to ourselves, and then if possible to somebody from the family that we want to send it to, that we have a good relationship with, or that we feel that they need it. And I come back to myself. And then, you know, when they understand, they might want to do something with a neutral person, but we do not go to the enemy.
Yeah.
Not right now.
Yeah. Thank you.
And, you know, sometimes people do it on their own, but that's not what we teach. So.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hannah wants to ask something.
About the rain
Is it
meditation.
possible? Yes, we can send that, but
Yeah.
maybe we can do it as a last, we can do it shortly.
I would not do rain meditation shortly.
No, did you not mention, Juditta, you mentioned some of the meditations which you would suggest, or
Right.
so yeah.
So I can send it to you, the rain meditation, and.
But is it the classical one, the classical rain? Ah, okay. I thought it's something with real. I thought it's because we spoke about waters and so. Okay, no, then I'm well equipped, and then.
Okay.
But for sure, I would really. If already my voice is there, I would love to learn more from you, Juditta. Really, if you do a master class, because I feel you really to sort things out alone and just manage, you know, because there is this ambivalence, you know, of you know, for me, for example, I also feel so nurtured by working in the Zaatari camp, which I often don't call refugees, but simply Syrians, because already that's making them a victim, and I don't want them to make an object of my measurements. You know, they're subjects where I learn so much, and I feel life, you know, life is so much easy, let's say, because I can let go of all of that when I receive from them how they manage to become so grateful and so wise and so loving, having nothing, you know. Then I ask myself, why do I need all this stuff here around, like, you know? So, but at the same time, it's also emotionally really very challenging, and there's so much wisdom and knowledge and experience in your house, in your back, you know, in your surrounding. I'd love to learn more, like, yeah, this school to learn more and maybe share. Because we did the translations, and we did it in, I spoke broken Arabic, they preferred. Yes, and we did it in Arabic also, the things, and it was a lot of discussions with the words, and a lot we had to and we took also then citations from the Quran and from Rumi and so on, you know, to bring that in, and brought it more, but it's, let's say, it's not studied upon, it's just coming from the urge, as they asked.
But that's
you know.
great. It's great, and it would be nice to hear as well, you know, what materials work good for them and what not. So that's, you know, Zachary is a very, very big camp.
Yes, indeed. So yeah. But thank you,
Anna. So I think that we should collect ourselves now and say goodbyes. I want to thank Teresa a lot and Katerina for inviting me, and thank you all. Yeah.
Thank you. It was our pleasure. Yeah, thank you very much for your wisdom and for what you have done for this small community today. But yeah, thank you. I hope someone will have a bit more of nourishment by listening to the recording. So that's also possible.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.